On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Barbara Geldert to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Geldert, the Hormonista, was living her best life as a teacher and fitness instructor. However, she faced unexpected challenges when she started experiencing perimenopause, an unexplained gain in weight, and battling depression. She fought to understand what was happening and found healing through Dr. Mindy Pelz's book, The Menopause Reset. Now she's helping women everywhere take back control of their health through her company, Full Cycle Hormones. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you're doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. And you can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on just about all of those streaming services, including Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791, the podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic you know a guest who would love to share their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. I got a conference reminder before I introduce our esteemed guest. I'd like to highlight the upcoming Survive and Thrive 8791 Mental Health and Recovery Conference taking place in Madison, Wisconsin. Join us on Wednesday and Thursday, October 29th and 30th at the Ho-Chunk Nation Madison branch office. This powerful two-day event will feature several guests who will share their stories through mental health and addiction and recovery challenges and how they learn to survive and thrive. You can register for the conference on our website. If you're a business or an advocate for mental health and recovery, we invite you to partner with us through sponsorship opportunities. Our website is Survive and Thrive 8791. And before I get to our guest and episode intro, I do need to apologize a little bit. Those of you that were looking for the podcast on Thursday, October 9th, due to some injuries and technical difficulties and some injured reserve list, we had a couple of guests that had planned to come on, and some things happened. Nothing serious, but enough that they couldn't be on. So when I can't get a guest, you would normally get me, but I had some work stuff this week that had to get done. So this episode will be airing hopefully on Monday, October 13th. And I'm darn glad we can get back on the air. This is our guest and episode intro. And according to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Barbara?
Oh, it's always right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's always right. Mm-hmm. She said that's the first one I had of that. It is always right according to some people. I don't need the internet. I don't need Alexa. I don't need Siri. I've got my wife, Sarah, and she's always right.
That's probably true. Yes.
Politically correct how to play that. According to an AI, artificial intelligence overview, the average age at which menopause occurs is 51 years old, but it can vary widely among individuals. Menopause is considered to have occurred when a woman has not had a menstrual period for 12 consecutive months. Early menopause is defined as occurring before the age of 45. Perimenopause. Correct? Perimenopause?
Yes.
And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, and factors that may influence the age at which menopause occurs include genetics, race, smoking status, hormonal factors, and lifestyle. And I'm so glad you can join us today, because just a little over half of my folks that listen to the podcast are women. But I think you'll agree, because we talked about this, that men should not turn this off, especially if you're married, if you have a sister, if you have a daughter, if you have a coworker, if you have a neighbor across the fence that is a woman, born with all the woman's parts, you would benefit them greatly, and you probably will benefit yourself knowing signs, symptoms, warnings, feelings, emotions, And that's kind of why you're on the show today. So today I welcome Barbara Geldert to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Barbara grew up right here in Wisconsin, Monona, Wisconsin. She would move to Plymouth, Minnesota for high school. After high school, she wore many hats and did many things in the professional world. She is currently the Hormonista. Hormonista, say that 5 times as fast as you can. Anyway, she's going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but I'm so glad you could join us, Barbara Geldert. What is up?
I am good, doing great. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here under some certain circumstances. One is going to be a little celebratory tomorrow, which will be Saturday, and then the other one is you kind of juggling some other things on your plate,
yes,
which I'll let you talk about if you'd like. But how was your summer? And you might actually touch on that right now.
Well, it was probably the most difficult summer of my life, if I'm being really honest. I have been taking care of my mom off and on, and she's been in and out of the hospital many, many times. So it's been a rough one, but it's been a great learning experience, that's for sure. And it's been giving me a lot of time with my mom. So I can see it on that side of it and be thankful that I'm here doing everything I possibly can for her.
There's some positives to that you get to spend some extended time with your mother.
Yep.
And then kind of maybe the lower light of that would be trying to make some decisions about end of life things or the last 5 or 10 years,
yes,
et cetera.
Yes. I think, yeah. Well, we've been doing that for a little while, but yeah, it's been a lot of changes, making decisions. Should she still stay in her house or not? And we've decided that she should not still be in her house, or bringing hospice into the story. And yes, we've had to bring hospice into the story. So it's been a lot of decisions, you're right, a lot of difficult ones, but a lot of learning experiences and things that I hope I can help others through, because, like menopause, it shocks you as to everything that you have to go through. You're not expecting it. And so yeah, learning a lot.
And I would like to say this too, that since you have your emotional together and physically and mentally and emotionally and all those things, you can go into these things with your mom or whoever, and you can do it with kind of a clear mind. Somewhat.
Much more so than I could have before I learned, how to manage that. Yes, 100%. I'm handling it way better than I ever would in the past, just because of what I've implemented and what kind of lifestyle I've started living.
Yeah, I'm so interested in what you're going to share today. I know you can't share it all because we would need to have like a 8-week course on this, but if you can condense it down into about 60 minutes, this is going to be great stuff for my female and male listeners that want to listen to this for ways to help themselves or a loved one.
Yes.
Did you take any vacation? I know you had a lot of windshield time, or what do you do to stay busy? Besides the windshield time.
Yeah, this summer I did not take any vacations other than, going to Minnesota. I live in Tennessee currently, so I've been going to Minnesota and back and forth quite a bit. Staying busy. I have my own business, so I'm trying to run that business, as well as, honestly, being on the phone 3 to 6 hours Monday through Friday, just managing my mom's care from afar, which is why I'm up here right now in Wisconsin. I was in Minnesota, and I thought I'd pop down here and be in Wisconsin for a little bit with some friends. But that's really what's keeping me busy. And honestly, at this point in my life, I think that's where my focus has to be. So it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It is. Well, I know we were going to talk about this at the end, but I think this is a great time to talk about it. You currently live outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, in a whatever village, Ottawa.
Yes.
Ottawa, Tennessee, and that is spelled, for those of you keeping track at home, Oolewah.
Almost. There's a T in there.
Oh.
Ooltewah.
Okay. Native American spelling you had mentioned.
Yes.
Tell us about living outside Chattanooga, because one of the things I remember about some of my road trips I've done is coming out of the mountains, and then you come down into Chattanooga, and it's just really kind of cool to see and you get to see from afar as you're coming into town. Tell us a little bit about where you live and whatnot.
I love it. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think there are just so many things that you can do outdoors. There's a community that I mean, I'm clearly not from there. I don't speak like anybody from there, and it's very obvious to people. But they'll sit with me, sitting at a bar, we're having a beer, and they immediately want to know where I'm from, what made me decide to go there. So it's just a really open community. I will say the city of Chattanooga is the first national park or state park city that is National Park City, I believe is what it's called, in all of the United States, and only the second one in the world. It just went through the application process, and the only other one in the world is in England. And there are 5 more that are supposed to be coming up over the years. So it's really an amazing place to be outdoors. And like you said, just the views that you can see. The specific town of Ottawa, where I'm at, is, like you said, a suburb of Chattanooga, and it's up and coming for sure. And they have this little square in their little downtown, in quotes, that it's like a 2-block square where it's just bars and restaurants all the way around it, and you can just go from one to the other.
Kind of like Madison.
Kind of.
or just about any small city in Wisconsin.
Yeah, kind of.
Bars and churches.
Mm-hmm. But it's just, in the middle of it all, there's this green area, and there's seats and whatnot, and there's music almost every single day of the week, live music almost every single day of the week, in the fall especially, and the spring, and in the summer when it gets too hot. They pipe in music 24 hours a day. Anytime you're there, you're hearing and it's good music. It's like my kind of music, 70s, 80s, 90s type stuff. And no, I love it. I could talk about it forever.
The Decoras might have to go and find a vacation home in Ottawa.
Yeah.
What is by the way, I do have to ask, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's like a river that flows through there. What river is that?
Tennessee River.
Tennessee River. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was my first question. And then my second question is, how many words do people from the South ask you, hey, can you say that again? Say bag.
Mm-hmm. Bag.
Bag.
Yeah, yes, they do that. What they do is when they hear that I'm from Minnesota, they'll say, well, I'm from Wisconsin and Minnesota is what I'll tell them. And I said, but I finished school in Minnesota. And they're like, but you don't say it the same. It's supposed to be Minnesota.
Minnesota.
And I said, well, I've lived in a lot of places. I've been an English teacher, so I try to tame that down a little bit. So, but yeah, when I'm drinking, it comes out for sure.
Yes. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Do you cook, Barbara?
I do.
And if you do, tell me about genre style cuisine.
I love cooking. So because of the lifestyle I'm embracing now, I do a lot of what I call the 3 Ps: prebiotics, probiotics, and protein, and polyphenols. So it's 4 Ps actually, and polyphenols. And I try to get those into my food at all costs, because those are the things that women need as we're aging, because it brings in different hormones into our body. So that would include a lot of leafy greens, a lot of berries, a lot of nuts, a lot of seeds, a lot of protein, whatever I can get in protein, a lot of chicken. And then there's this other thing that I use all the time that's like a brat, but it's made with only vegetables, because I grew up in the Midwest. I love my brats. And so
is that boudin?
No,
it's not boudin, because it's not Louisiana.
No. But no, so I cook that stuff all the time. A lot of sauerkraut, a lot of yogurt, a lot of cottage cheese.
My mouth is watering right now.
I know. And I make a 4-piece pizza. I make it from scratch, and it's like famous now. So I can give you that recipe later if you need it.
If there's not too many carbs, I'll be all over that.
Oh, it's not. No, not.
Nice. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back. With locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb, most communities in Dane County, which encompasses the Madison metropolitan area, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And I do a little drum roll here. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
We were talking about this. I'm pretty sure I have, but it's been a long time ago, so I need to check it out.
A long time ago, many moons. But the next time you come, and I wish I could say, hey, because they're a sponsor, I get free food. I don't, but I would be happy to join you for a dinner or whatever, or lunch at Buck and Honey's, and we'll do that. And then the closest one here is either Sun Prairie or Monona.
Love it.
On the podcast, our Guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like, so we'll get into Barbara's history, what happened to get Barbara on the podcast. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now. And we discuss Barbara's 5 suggestions for thriving. So what was it like and what happened? You were raised in Monona, Wisconsin through, I believe it's the 7th or 8th grade. And then you moved to Plymouth, Minnesota. So you mentioned earlier to me when I asked what was it like growing up, you said 2 completely different worlds. Explain that for our Wisconsin and our Minnesota people, or the difference.
Sure. So growing up in Monona, Wisconsin was idyllic. I lived in a neighborhood where there were children and we all played together no matter our ages. We had the Monona pool right across the street. We had the lagoon at that little park right across the street. We had the library 2 doors down.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and that's where I grew up. And we had a fire pit in our backyard. Everybody would come to our yard, and it wasn't a party, but it was a gathering all the time. And all the neighbors would come. They would smell the fire, and they would just come on over. It was not this.
Came out of the woodwork.
Right. We didn't have to call. We didn't have to schedule it. We just were together. And the kids would be able to run down to the park, play, do whatever they want. And then, I wait to hear the whistle, or my neighbor waits to hear their mom, holler their names because it carried all over the town. And the whistle for my parents, I could hear it. And then we would come home, and that was it. And it was just so easy and fun and just great having that community. And when I went to Minnesota, I was going into 8th grade. And so I had been going to Winnequa Middle School. If anybody even knows Winnequa Middle School, that's where I was going.
Yes.
And in 8th grade, went up to Plymouth, Minnesota. And it was still a beautiful place. It just, for me, in my life, it changed a lot. It changed dramatically because all of a sudden I had no friends and I needed to make friends. And when you're in 8th grade and awkward and weird already, it's not super easy to do that. However, luckily I was a band geek, so I was in the band a little bit and made some friends through there. But it just was never
the same.
It wasn't the same, no. And the kind of when the kids got together, again, we were older, but it was more about this party life and drinking started at a very young age, which I'm guessing it did here too. I don't know. I wasn't here when we got to that age, but it was just a real stark reality for me when I went up there. Also, I have 3 siblings, but they're all significantly older than I am, so none of them were in Minnesota either. So I didn't have that as a support in the beginning. They ended up, a lot of them, they all moved there, but it just felt very unsupported. Same thing for my parents. Even though they were born and raised there, they hadn't been there in years and years and years. And they also were trying to find their place and, go to work and try to make friends in those places where people probably already had their friends. I don't know. It just was a very different feel at the house.
And it wouldn't have been different had you grown up in Plymouth.
Right.
And then maybe moved here and flip-flopped. It would have been strange having all of these people at your house when it wasn't like that in Plymouth.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
But so you kind of touched on a little bit. Tell us about your family growing up. Mom, dad, and some siblings. And there was a big gap between you and your next sibling. And you kind of talked about it, but go ahead.
Yep. My parents were still together. They've been together forever. And I had a brother and 2 sisters. My brother's passed, but he was 13 years older than I was. One of my sisters was 12 years older than I was, and the other one was 10 years older than I was. So it was like I was a 10-year later on new family kind of coming in, because by the time I was, 7 or 8, they were all out of the house and doing their own adult life type stuff. And so I wouldn't say I was, the youngest one, the one that's 10 years older than I was probably the closest to her. Just because she happened to be in town. She stayed in town. But no, I just really wasn't close with my siblings. They were around. We had holidays. That was all fine. It was just, there was such an age gap that we just had a whole different lifestyle, whole different, and I have the same parents, obviously, but it was just a very different time in life for my parents than raising 3 kids all at the same time when they were in their early 20s, rather than having me when they were 35 and 36 years old. And only having one at home. It's just was a very different lifestyle.
And you probably got the long leash because they were just happy that you were alive and somewhere in town. And, she'll come back if she wants food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much, yes.
You graduated from Armstrong High School in Plymouth, Minnesota, and you're a proud Falcon. What were some of your favorite memories from your time in Plymouth, Armstrong High School?
Yeah, this was a good question. I would say dancing was one of the big things. Anytime there was a school dance, that was a big deal for me. I love dancing. I also I also took dance lessons outside of high school. If I'm being super honest, I wasn't super involved with high school and what was going on there. Mostly I worked and I had a lot of fun. I worked at that's a really good memory. I worked at Dairy Queen.
Ooh.
That's where I made some really good friends. Those are probably the closest friends I had was when I worked at Dairy Queen. And that was during high school, but I worked a lot of hours. I worked like 30 hours a week there. And, but I had a blast. So it was fun. Those are really good people. So that was a really good
I'm thinking
memory.
about my go-to right now at Dairy Queen was the strawberry sundae. And then my wife's was the peanut butter parfait.
I love me a peanut butter parfait. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we've got the people drooling on their way to work. Keep your hands at 10 and 2, people. After high school, you would take your talents to the work world, and you would wear many hats and do many things in your professional career, and would probably set you up for success, I think you mentioned in your current role as the Hormonista, because of all of those experiences. It's helped you. Talk about some of your favorite work things you did in the professional world, because you eventually would go to the University of Minnesota, but we'll get to that here shortly. Talk about your work stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done a lot, and I've enjoyed, I would say 99% of it. Being a teacher was a really big highlight of my life when I worked.
Me too.
Yep. I started teaching in Mexico, actually. So I lived in Mexico for 4 years and had gone to school there and taught English, and then came back to the United States, and I decided I still wanted to be a teacher. So I went on and kept on teaching. I taught English and Spanish at that point. That was probably my favorite career I've ever had, is being a teacher. It was just, I just really enjoyed it, especially when I was in Mexico. It's just a different feeling. And also I just wanted to live in Mexico, and it was the easiest legal way to get there. So I was only going to do it just to get there. And it turned into finding my passion and finding what I was put on this planet for. So that was pretty remarkable. I think also teaching adults, I do a lot with teaching adults and do training with adults and coaching. And I did a lot of leadership development. And I absolutely love it when someone comes to you for some coaching or some development, and they truly want to listen and they want to try what you're talking about, and they trust you. They just say, okay, this is what you're telling me to do. I'm going to try it. And it works. It is so rewarding. I actually just got goosebumps. It's so rewarding for me. And I just watch them flourish, and it's them doing it. I'm not doing it. And I love seeing that. So those are the two, I would say, biggest things, but I've done a lot of jobs in my day. So, but those are the two biggest highlights, I would say, other than, what it is I do now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, somebody asked me about that, or I read something about why people go into teaching and then why they stay into teaching, and other people in maybe a lot of the business world don't get this opportunity, but the many miracles that happen in a day for a teacher, if they go and look for them and work with kids, you're going to get these mini miracles. As many times as you talk to somebody, boom, you're going to get some. And then some come out of nowhere. Hey, Mr. Cora. Hey, Miss Geldert, this happened, or I want to share this about something. And boom, you get another one. And it's just like this constant hit of, endorphins. Yes. And things that make you feel good. I'm trying to remember the feel good. Cortisol.
That's stress. Oxytocin and dopamine.
There we go. Dopamine.
Yep.
Dopamine hits.
Yes, exactly.
That we get that keep us going. And yeah, sometimes you can't pay for that. And they're paying us to get those.
Yes.
You would eventually go to the University of Minnesota, the Gophers, and you would graduate with some impressive sounding degrees to me. You majored in linguistics and minored in second language acquisition. What in the heck did you want to do with those degrees? And I already know.
Yeah, I wanted to continue teaching. I wanted to continue teaching in the United States, but I also had a fascination with languages, and I really wanted to teach languages. I was hoping to actually start teaching more than just Spanish and English. And so linguistics, if you don't know, is the study of languages and how they're built and constructed. And also, there's a lot of aspects to linguistics, but that's It's how they're put together and how they've been put together through history and how they've evolved. And that just fascinated me. And then the second language acquisition is really working with people who are trying to acquire a second language. So when I was living in Mexico, I was teaching people how to speak English. So that's the second language acquisition. When I was in the United States, I was teaching people Spanish. And actually, I was still teaching English to students who were coming from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I thought that was important, is I wanted to make sure, are there things that I'm missing that I don't really think about when I'm helping someone try to acquire a second language? Because I had acquired a second language by living in Mexico, and so I had an understanding. But even taking that as my minor, I learned a lot about myself because of how I learned the language that I didn't realize how I learned it. Because I didn't really take classes I didn't take any classes in Mexico. But before I went, like in 8th grade, I took like a semester of Spanish, and maybe in 9th grade too. I don't know. But other than that, I'd never studied Spanish either, so I couldn't speak it when I got there. So
You got kind of thrown to the lions a little bit.
I did. Well, I taught English though, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. And but I wanted to learn it. So I threw myself to the wolves, but that's another whole story of how I learned it. It was pretty fun.
Because our listeners want to hear the rest of your story and what brought you to the podcast, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time. Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask, why Buck and Honey's? Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honey's does. At age 42, you start entering a time that for some women is somewhat easy and for others can be very rough or tough. Barbara Geldert is here today to share what happened and how she helps women go through what she did with some education that helped her cope and really essentially survive and thrive. So please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. I'm glad today to have Barbara Geldert, the Hormonista, on the podcast today. She's going to share her story and what it's like to go through the changes of a woman's life. And I want to mention this again for segment 2, that if there's some fellas, some spouses, some husbands, some brothers, fathers, neighbors, men that are listening today, and you feel like, well, this isn't really going to be for me, and you want to maybe go and change the channel, I'm going to say hold on today for the next 20, 25 minutes. Hold on, because there might be a woman, female in your life, whatever that is, spouse, neighbor, cousin, daughter, sister, that's going to go through some of the things that the Hormonista is going to talk about today. And you can be there as a supporting, again, man in somebody's life who's near and dear to you, that you can help them out or understand what they're going through. And you might even add a few more things to that. So at age 42, you start to experience some of the symptoms of perimenopause. You mentioned you didn't know what that was when you started going through it. Tell our listeners what you were experiencing early on.
Yeah, it was, well, what started happening was I started feeling a little bit forgetful, more so than normal, because I'm really good at remembering people's names.
Geez, maybe I'm going through perimenopause. I can't remember put my shoes on right.
That was one of the first things I remember. And then I just started, I should say my part-time job was I was a physical fitness. I taught physical fitness, so group fitness, kickboxing, boot camp, any of that stuff. I just loved it. And I taught 6 days a week, and I had a pretty okay diet. And then all of a sudden I was starting to gain weight, and I couldn't figure out, and I thought maybe it's stress. I don't know. And I just work out harder. Nothing mattered. And I just kept gaining weight. And as a fitness instructor, that is not what I needed. First of all, it's hard on your body. And because as an instructor, I needed to be high energy. So, that's what I felt like anyway. So that was a big factor. I started gaining weight, and then the memory problem for me was big because my dad died from Alzheimer's. And so it was freaking me out, thinking, oh my gosh. And he was only 70 when he died. So I thought, is it starting even earlier for me? So I started, trying to take supplements and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, I started having these just moments of unhappiness that I really hadn't had before. And again, I thought, well, maybe it's just things that are going on in life. I, had this job that I really did enjoy. I really enjoyed the job. But I thought maybe it's other things. I'm still single. I haven't had any kids, and I'm in my 40s, and maybe that's not going to happen for me. And I just attributed it to so many other things, and I'd never even heard of perimenopause at that point in my life. Never heard of it. Then I don't know how much I want to share on here. I guess I'm going to share everything because I've been sharing it in my classes. But I started episodes of incontinence, which meant, I'd go to the bathroom and I'd walk away from the bathroom and then I immediately have a leak. And that was startling for me, especially as a fitness instructor, because you're wearing clothes that are pretty tight generally, and that's going to show if you have an accident like that. So it was just different things like that were creeping in that just were making me feel not myself. I will say another one is I all of a sudden had a loose tooth, and I've had good teeth my whole life. That scared me, and I didn't understand that, and that's another whole story, but it just got worse and worse, and I all of a sudden had 7 loose teeth. So
Actually, when you brought the word incontinence, and again, I'm applauding you for talking about that, because a lot of people might suppress that and hide that and not let anybody know that. But I think that's part of some of when the guests come on and they say and talk about some things that a lot of people suppress, it's the more times you say it, the easier it gets, and the easier it gets to deal with. Mm-hmm. And incontinence is something that I'm glad you brought up, because it wasn't more than like 3 or 4 years ago that I even knew what that word was. And now I do. And I'm I can be sympathetic if somebody mentions that and understand and nod my head. Okay, I understand that. And mm-hmm. Try to be supportive in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Since the show has a mental health component to it, you were experiencing some depression. Mm-hmm. What was at the heart of your depression? And I think maybe having these things pop up out of nowhere. Talk about that. I think it started gradual. I will say the most impactful thing when I reflect, now that I can reflect on it, was the weight gain, because the weight gain affected everything in my life. And I'm talking 76 pounds in 2 years. I mean, it's significant for someone who's teaching fitness 6 days a week. It just didn't make any sense. And so I was so frustrated because doctors couldn't tell me what else to do other than eat less and exercise more. It's like, I'm already doing that. Like, I've been doing that for years, and something is wrong with me. And the fact that nobody could help me with it, well, doctor-wise, that's the only real people that I, talked to about it was the doctors. And just the fact that I started having injuries, and then I couldn't teach my fitness anymore. And so I've taken fitness out of my life, which was I absolutely love working out, and I couldn't as much anymore. And I think that was the catalyst for the depression, was this weight gain, because it just affected everything in my life, and I just couldn't get rid of it, and I couldn't figure it out. I was just, I can feel it right now, like I'm about to cry, because I was just so heavy with this weight, but also with this feeling of, what am I doing wrong? What is happening? I don't understand what is happening, and
I didn't know anyone else who, in my life, who had gained weight like that and had nothing to explain it. So I really think that was the catalyst for my depression. I will say there was one day I finally told someone, all I want to do is just live one day longer than my mom, because my brother had already passed. And I was like, I'm not doing that to my mom. I cannot die before my mom. So that's all I have to do is I just have to figure out how to stay healthy enough to live one day longer than my mom. And then I don't care what happens. Yeah, that was the depth. That was the lowest that I felt. And I felt that for a long time.
Again, I have to give you a tremendous amount of credit and courage, but I can tell you've talked about this, and or you've talked to clients, or you've talked to your own doctors and other people, and you've mentioned the weight, and it rolled off your tongue. And a lot of times when I have people that I talk to about weight, they kind of say it quietly and they don't want anybody to hear it. But you talked about the W word, weight. And that's a thing that not a lot of women will openly talk about. But it sounds like you kind of credit that a little bit to maybe part of your mental health getting better, that when you started to talk about it and then have some people answer some questions of why it's happening. Who were you leaning on for support at this time?
Unfortunately, nobody. I did not share this with my family. Like I said, my siblings are much older than I am, so they'd been through this, and it wasn't really shared in my family, so I didn't talk to them. I didn't say anything to my friends other than, gosh, I don't know why I'm gaining weight. Gosh, I wish I could do something. And it was never really, I'm losing my shit here. Like, I don't know what's going on in my life. And I never said anything like that to anybody until that one day I said to someone, I just need to live one day longer than my mom. And I don't even know what made me say it that day. Unfortunately, I don't think she knew what to say. And I don't blame her. I mean, what do you say to someone who's always acted cheery and seemed like they're okay, and then all of a sudden they tell you this, and out of the blue? So after that, I really didn't tell anybody again. And like I said, I only said something to doctors, and I stopped going to doctors because they had no answers for me other than exercise more and eat less and cut out carbs and sugar and all the stuff I'd already done, or I tried to do anyway. So,
all right, I feel like doing a drum roll right here, because this is the stuff that I think is it changed your life. And you have some things that if people either reach out to you on your under construction Facebook page, or you'll give your email address in here, of people being able to contact you. If you help one or two women, you've done your job. But I think with the reach of the podcast now, I think you're going to be able to help more people than that. But at age 52, you find a doctor who would help you feel better for the first time in years. And it might have been before 42 that you started feeling things when the perimenopause came on. And then 10 years later, you find somebody. Who was the doctor, and share what happened?
So her name is Dr. Mindy Pelz, and I just found her book. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know.
Okay, Mindy, and then
Dr. Mindy Pelz.
Pelz.
Correct, yes. Okay. So I read this book. It's called The Menopause Reset, and I actually don't even remember how it came to.
The Menopause Reset.
Yes, by Dr. Mindy Pelz. It's a very thin book. I don't remember at all how it came to me. I don't know how it fell into my hands.
Dropped out of the sky.
Something. Which is just crazy that I don't remember it, because it was just so impactful to me. So it's a very thin book. And so I just powered through it one day, and I just read through it, and I was just, her story in the beginning just captured me, because it was exactly my story. I was like, oh, again, I'm getting goosebumps. I like, there's someone else who went through this. I couldn't believe it, because I had heard no one talk about the stuff that I had been going through. And her whole story was just was so eye-opening. And I was like, I just couldn't get this book read fast enough. And when I put the book, and this was happening when I was staying at home with my mom for 4 months because she had her shoulder replaced, and it was her right arm. So she couldn't do anything. So I was taking care of my mom. I was working 8 hours a day.
You're her right-hand guy.
Yeah, I was, yes. I was taking care of her. I was working full time. I was actually still teaching fitness online. I wasn't in a gym anymore because when COVID hit, I switched to online and whatever. That's another whole story. And I just implemented one piece from this book. I just took out one single piece and I was like, that's all I can do right now. And I did it. And do you want me to share what that piece is right now?
Absolutely. Okay. Everybody's waiting with bated breath and pens and pencils and gonna hit the record button.
It was to reduce my eating window, otherwise known as fasting. And I was that person who, I worked in fitness and was like, I eat 6 small meals a day. I got to keep that fire burning to get my metabolism going. Well, that's all a bunch of BS. I've learned. I did not know. It could work for people, 20s and early 30s, but as for women, I should say, but as our bodies change and as our hormones change, that actually will not work. And it's 100% counterproductive. So, and she explained it all in there, and she explained it in a way where it was sciencey enough that I believed it, but not so sciencey that it was completely over my head. She just nailed it for me. And
an easy read.
Yes, it was very easy read with a lot of takeaways. And so I reduced my eating window, which actually wasn't all that hard. I thought it was going to be very hard for me. And once I started doing this, and so I started, just going like 13 or 14 hours without eating, which that includes your sleep time. So it's really not that difficult once you get into it, because if you're sleeping 8 hours a night, 8 hours a night, that's already half of your time, more or less, that's done. And so I would just delay, and I was taking care of my mom, and my mom likes to eat by like 4:30 in the afternoon. So that was perfect. So I just would eat with her, and then I wouldn't eat the rest of the night. And then in the mornings I would do my workouts, and I don't like to eat before a workout. So it was actually okay. So I worked up to between 17 and 19 hours every day. And I just felt so much better so fast. I couldn't believe it. My brain was like it was on fire for the first time in years. It was just like firing on all cylinders, and I just couldn't believe it. And so this is while I'm taking care of my mother and working a full-time job and teaching fitness. In 3 months, at age 52, I dropped 32 pounds in 3 months, which is like unheard of for when you're at that age and when you're going through all these hormonal changes. So I was sold, and I just kept going from there. I just kept adding things from her book from there.
I want to go back to one thing, because you mentioned this when you sent the questionnaire and the answers back. You said something about brain fog, and then you just said now your senses and things turned on. Talk about the brain fog. What were you going through there?
Oh my gosh. It was, like I said earlier, that was one of the first signs, is that I just started feeling really like I was forgetting things, or at work, I couldn't concentrate. I just couldn't finish a project is what it seemed like. I was really struggling, and I would forget pretty much anything if it wasn't written down. Like I had to write everything down.
If it's not on the list, it doesn't exist.
Right. That is pretty much what it was. And even when it was on the list and I would look at the list and I'd be like, I would have to just look at the paper or whatever it was I was looking at for a long time before I was like, okay, so what do I do? And it was very, like, again, I said my dad died from Alzheimer's, and it was just very unnerving that every day of my life I felt like that. And every day working I was working in the corporate world at that point. I was afraid of losing my job because I felt like I could not do the work that they hired me to do. The work that I had been good at for so many years, all of a sudden, I couldn't put it together. Luckily I had people who would collaborate with me, but it was frightening. It was just this feeling of, I got to hide this. I got to hide this from everybody, and I got to figure out a way around this. I was working around the clock. Like I wouldn't just work my 8-hour day for work because I couldn't actually get the work done. And so I was working around the clock just trying to get my work done at the times when my brain would let me. So yeah, so when I started doing this, that was the first thing that I noticed. And I will mention to everybody out there, because everybody says you get hot flashes and you're moody. That's what you get when you go through perimenopause or menopause, whatever you want to call it. And there's so much more to it. And I will say I didn't have real hot flashes. Mine would last maybe 10 seconds, and I hardly even sweated. I could just it just was such a quick thing for me. And so it's not always just about hot flashes. You could be in perimenopause and never have a hot flash or a night sweat or whatever you want to call it. And so that's part of the reason I didn't realize I was in perimenopause in the beginning, because I never had that. The brain fog was the big thing. But yeah, I was just firing on all cylinders. It felt amazing. And losing weight.
You were rejuvenated.
Yeah.
You felt a lot better in years, and you lost weight. That was the one thing I was going to ask you in case some of the listeners were wondering, did she lose weight? Get to the part, did she lose weight? She mentioned the weight, and you said 32 of the 76. And are you still balanced out? Are you at where you want to be, or you don't care what you weigh because I feel so much better up here?
That is exactly it. So I will say, if I keep losing weight, great. Because I've dropped about now, like, I think it was like 59 pounds total or something. I stopped weighing myself a while ago just because it really didn't matter anymore, because I felt, or I still feel, the best I have felt in so many years, that's really all that mattered. My brain fog is cleared up. My moodiness is gone. The depression is completely gone. I don't feel any symptoms of anything anymore. And I haven't been to a doctor in ages, and I don't know, I could talk about this forever, but I just feel like a different person. I feel like the person I'm supposed to be. If the weight keeps coming off, great. If it doesn't, great. It just doesn't really matter at this point.
What I really like about what you just talked about is not a magic pill. It's not a shot to the arm or to the hip. It's not going by this piece of equipment. It's buying an easy read book. And then probably really the only thing you got to invest in is working on some discipline that maybe you used to have. Or if you don't have any discipline, you have to start working on that. And eventually 13 hours goes to 14 hours, and putting the food away for just a little bit at extended periods of time has its merits, you're telling us.
Well, yeah. So the thing is what happens is we have these two metabolic systems that nobody ever teaches us about. And one of them burns sugar and the other one burns ketones. Well, if you never have a time where you're not eating for for at least, 14 hours, 16 hours if you can, these ketones actually never kick in. And which is where the keto diet comes from. I'm sure people out there have heard of the keto diet. Well, the keto diet works because you're bringing ketones into your body and you're using those instead of sugar because you've cut the sugar out of your body. The challenge with that for women is that we actually need to eat certain foods to work on our progesterone and our estrogen. And whether or not we're in perimenopause, before we ever get to menopause or post-menopause, we still need to eat foods that feed our progesterone and feed our estrogen, and foods that detox those from our bodies in the right way. So it's just such a bigger scope than just, I'm just going to not eat type thing. But what I want to get back to is these two metabolic systems that we have. Our brain works off 50% sugar and 50% ketones, and our mitochondria work off of 50% sugar and 50% ketones. So if you never have ketones coming into your body because you're not fasting, you're not reducing your eating window, your brain literally its whole life has never used 50%. It's never gotten that other 50% of energy. Same with your mitochondria, which are crucial to your body. And I never knew that before. So that to me is a big reason why I want to make sure that I am switching between when I'm eating food and when I'm not eating food. It's a weird thing. I love the habit of it. I love the calming of it. But, I've done a 3-day fast, water fast, and it is probably the best I've ever felt in my life, brain clarity and energy wise. It is remarkable. I never would have guessed that that's how I'd feel, but it was all ketones. That's what ketones brings in. And women who are in menopause, specifically menopause, not perimenopause, like you've gone through that year of not having a period, that is when you actually need your ketones more than any other time in your life. And there's actually a new book coming out about that called Age Like a Girl from the same doctor. So I studied under her, so this is why I know all this stuff, and it just is amazing to me. But anyway, I'll let you go.
Dr. Pells
Yes.
is going to be getting a spike in her books on Amazon. So that'll be good. What is Barbara Geldert doing now? I mentioned the Hormonista. Talk about that.
Yes. So I have a business. It's called Full Cycle Hormones. And what I do for women and what I attempt to do for women is teach them ways that they can take control of their health. You mentioned earlier, taking a shot or taking a pill or whatever it is. That's fine. I'm not going to say that that's not okay, but it's also, do you want to do that for the rest of your life? Because as soon as you stop, you still need to figure out a way to regulate your hormones. So I work with women who, whether they're on a shot or HRT or whatever the case might be, or not, and they want to do it without any of that.
Natural.
Yes, to teach them, because I never did any of that, because I just, pardon me, I just didn't want to be stuck doing something for the rest of my life that isn't a lifestyle. That's, to me, I didn't want that to be my lifestyle. There's some people who, they're fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. You do you, man. That's all I say is you do you. But what I teach people is about these techniques that I've learned from Dr. Pelz of how to introduce the right foods into your body at the right time, how to reduce your eating window, when to do it, because we shouldn't do it all. As women, we should not do it all the time. Men can do it all the time because they don't have to deal with progesterone and estrogen like we do. And I also talk about toxins, bringing toxins out of your life, because toxins are rampant in every aspect of our life. So we talk about that. And that's what I do on a daily basis now is I primarily work with groups of women. We have cohorts that come together depending on where they are in their stage of perimenopause or menopause. So I can make sure that we're keeping it focused on what they need. I also do a lot of webinars that are just free webinars that I have out there. I have coursework that's going to actually be coming out shortly. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be something that someone can do on their own, or they can join me in a cohort and do that same kind of coursework. But it's all about teaching women how to manage their hormones, whether they're in perimenopause or postmenopause, and how to use this thing called a metabolic switch between your sugar burner system and your fat burning system, which is your ketones, is your fat burning system, and how to implement that in their lives and give them the power. A doctor doesn't have power over you. A pill shouldn't have power over you. You should have power over your own health. You may need things to help you to get to that point, but that's what I want to help you do, is get to that point where you feel freedom to say, I am actually in charge of my life and my health, and I feel really good about that, and I don't have to give away that power.
That is some really, really good stuff, touching on the science, and not so much so that people are turning the dial off, they want more. And then if they want more, you just talked about some of the work that you do. And I was going to say, or ask, since you're in Tennessee, not a lot of the Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois people that are listening to the show can get there, but you already addressed it, that you can do some webinars and maybe do a cohort of some kind where they don't have to go down there. They can hop on a computer and see what you're doing. I
will say 95% of what I do is online. There is a place in Tennessee where I'll go teach in person, but otherwise I do all of it online. And I will say I've been, like I said, I was a teacher and I was a coach and I was a trainer, and I've been training virtually since 2010. So it's not like a new thing for me like everybody else. When it started in 2020, I'd already been teaching virtually for 10 years. So I absolutely love doing it that way. I keep it very interactive just so people can walk away with something. They can walk away and actually do something that day in their life to start this path, as opposed to just me talking at them. I want them to be able to do it.
In addition to some of the stuff you talk about in your course, you also have the 5 things that you bring. So this is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, and pencils, or keep them out and flip the page over. Here are Barbara Geldert's 5 suggestions that have allowed her to survive and thrive through the life changes of a woman, in particular perimenopause and menopause. Here's what you shared with us, and I'm going to have you hit these 5 things in 60 seconds or less. It's kind of hit on them already because you've already sort of did, but I'm going to read these one by one. So we'll start with number 1. Be prepared to adjust your lifestyle as you move into perimenopause rather than look for a quick fix. A woman's body is losing 2 hormones that have been flowing on a regular cycle in their body since they were about 12 years old. All of a sudden, those hormones are no longer regular and also diminishing. A quick fix could get you on your way to better health, but there also needs to be overall lifestyle changes when a woman no longer has estrogen and progesterone in their body. Talk about that.
Yeah. So what we used to do, ladies, when we were in our 20s and 30s and early 40s, is not going to work because we do not have the same hormones cycling through our body. Estrogen is diminishing to the point of no return. Progesterone is also going to flatline. In the meantime, until they flatline, they're all over the place. They're up and down and up and down, and you literally have no control over it because you don't have a regular cycle anymore. So we have to eat the right foods at the right time to actually boost estrogen, boost progesterone, and then also detox them both in the right way. So that's a lifestyle change.
Number 2, eat for your hormones and not cravings. There are foods that feed estrogen and progesterone, as well as foods that help detox them from your body. So maybe talk about some of those foods that you did mention, but hit it again.
So like I said, it's a lifestyle. It's not just, this isn't a diet. And these foods that I'm talking about are things like leafy greens and nuts and berries and seeds and protein, prebiotics, probiotics, polyphenols, which include all of those that I just mentioned. And this is to be a new way of eating. That's how these 1 and 2 go together, is that you have to change a lifestyle. It's not a quick fix. And you also have to eat for your hormones, not your cravings, meaning you may be craving sweets, but what in reality is happening is your gut, your microbiome is saying, I need something else, or else I need to be cleaned. And if we don't fast, we're not cleaning it. And if we're not eating the right foods, we're not feeding it the right way. So we have sugar cravings, and they get worse as you get older, ladies. I'm telling you, I had some cravings that I'd never had in my life, and it took control.
Number 3, learn to metabolically switch. This means learning to move between your sugar burn system and your fat burner system. The only way to do this is by having times when you shorten your eating window, in parentheses, fasting. Remove toxins from your life, those in your food and in your environment. Go ahead and hit that.
So this is what I was talking about, is you have this sugar burner system and you have this fat burner system. Fat burner is when your ketones come into play. Ketones can only come into play when you're fasting. They can't any other time. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. There's some things you could do. Anyway, if you don't learn to switch between those, if your body doesn't learn to switch between those, then it's very difficult to burn fat. And so if you want to get that fat off your body, any fat from when you're 14, it doesn't, whatever, if it's still there, those ketones, that's the only thing they eat. They go in and they eat the fat. Another key thing, which I didn't mention in here, is when you metabolically switch between sugar burner and fat burner, those ketones, when they come in, they actually go up into your brain and they turn off your hunger signal. If that reminds you of anything, it should, because that's a GLP-1. That's what GLP-1 does, is it turns off your hunger signal. Well, if you fast and you get those ketones, it does exactly the same thing for free. All you got to do is eat. Yep.
Number 4, implement strategies to mitigate stress as much as possible. Find activities or outlets that bring you joy, oxytocin. Cortisol is the biggest enemy women have as they age. Go ahead and hit that.
Learning ways to give yourself joy, be happy, be around people who make you feel good. Those are all so important. They're important anytime, but as we age, it's more important because cortisol is the biggest enemy for women as we age. Because what does cortisol do? Cortisol comes from stress, first of all. If you're not aware of that, cortisol comes from stress. And there are a lot of stressors, especially if you're part of that sandwich generation, meaning that generation that has to take care of the elderly in their life and also has to take care of the kids in their life. That's the sandwich generation, which that's a lot of women right now that are, in their 40s and 50s. And that's a lot of stress. You may think that you're handling it. It's going to catch up with you. And what cortisol does when it comes into your body, it produces insulin. Sugar also produces insulin. Well, food produces insulin, but that is what makes you have stored fat. I'll just put it like that. Cortisol and insulin together are the worst things because they almost automatically bring stored fat to your body. And if you don't figure out a way to mitigate that stress and ways to work through it, ways to bring oxytocin into your life. Oxytocin is the top of the hormone hierarchy of the cream of the crop of what you want to have in your body. And the ways you do that is finding happiness, finding people around you that are supportive and also bring you joy, and just little activities. And I'm not going to say meditation, although I meditate. It is not for everybody. There are way more things that you can do besides just meditate to get rid of stress.
And last one, number 5, find a community of others experiencing what you are experiencing, whether it's menopause, caring for elderly parents, divorce, recovery, addiction. This is a huge one that should be a part of everybody's their process as they grow older and when they run into some issue. You're fixing your car Who do you go to? You go to somebody who knows how to fix cars, or you go to somebody like a neighbor. Hey, do you know how to do this?
Yes.
People traveling the same path, doing the same kinds of things, struggling. Go ahead and hit that.
100%. And I'm hoping this becomes more of a standard in society, as opposed to closing yourself off and wallowing in it by yourself and trying to figure out, because you're exactly right. When you're going to fix a car, if you don't know how to fix a car, most likely you're not just going to sit there and try to do it yourself. You are going to find somebody who can help you. It's the same exact thing. Any struggle you're going through, any experiences that you're going through that are new for you and you just don't know how to navigate them, I firmly believe a community behind you is beneficial. And the great thing is we have online communities, so we can talk to people all across the entire world who might be going through this. It doesn't have to be your neighbor. It doesn't have to be somebody at your community center. You can get online. There are things that you can find online. I will say I have created a community, and I learned that from Dr. Mindy Pelz, because she had a community that I was a part of. And I was very much that person, like, I don't need someone. I don't need to be part of that group. And once I joined, the things I learned and the things that people talked about, it just brought me such relief, because I found people that were speaking my language, that knew what I was going through, and I didn't even have to talk. All I had to do was listen. You don't always have to talk. There are going to be people who talk in these communities. That's not a problem. You can just go and listen, right? And you can be reassured and learn things that way. I couldn't talk about that enough. I think it's amazing.
The one thing you touched on there, which was kind of an issue with my anxiety disorder, was I thought I was the only one in my community that had this. There's nobody else up that's pacing the house at 2:00 in the morning because I can't sleep with insomnia. And you open yourself up, and all of a sudden there's other people that exist just like you. And all I had to do was tell my story. And when somebody comes to you and wants to tell you their story, what do you want to do? You want to help.
Right.
And when you tell enough people, there's going to be a lot of people that want to help.
Right.
What an episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you managed to work through something all women must go through is inspiring, especially how you came out of it. Your story reminds us all to have coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when a person is met with the physical changes, in particular women, of life. Despite that, you have survived and are thriving, and you're helping other women thrive. Our call to action, Barbara Geldert just shared her story about how she had to battle through the physical changes all women must go through as they age. She endured and has persevered. Here are Barbara Geldert's 5 suggestions that helped her survive and thrive. Number 1, be prepared to adjust your lifestyle. Number 2, eat your hormones, not cravings. Number 3, learn to metabolically switch. Number 4, implement strategies to mitigate stress as much as possible. And number 5, find a community of others experiencing what you were experiencing. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Barbara Geldert, the Hormonista?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, because
Shout out to Cindy Schrader, my web designer,
yes.
for connecting the two of us.
Yep, Cindy is the one who lived in that little neighborhood with me where I was in Monona. But yes, thank you for having me, because the more we can share this with people, the better it is. Whether it's men or women that we're sharing it with, everyone can learn something and be supportive, whether that's your coworker, your friend, a family member. And so thank you for that. Yeah, thank you to Cindy for connecting us. I think that's, I'm so thankful for that. And I have to thank Dr. Mindy Pelz, because without that book dropping in my lap, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know what would happen. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share, or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.